Hello everyone, this is Ishita. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about Lord Alfred Tennyson. This is going to be my second video of the Victorian series that I've started in my channel. So if you have looked at the previous video of the Victorian series, so in that video I talked about the background to the Victorian era. So I would advise you to look at that video first and then come here. Or if you want, you can look at this video in isolation as well, because Tennyson is a very important poet for university exam and also for the competitive exam, and otherwise also he's a very major Victorian poet. His poetry is actually in the real sense captures the major essence of the Victorian poetry. So Tennyson was the poet laureate for the majority of the Victorian era. So from 1850 to 1892, he held the position of the poet laureate. And his first very important poem, which kind of kick-started his career in literary world, was Timbuktu. So for this particular poem that he wrote, he won Chancellor's Gold Medal. So remembering that fact about this particular poem, Timbuktu, is really important. So after this particular poem, he wrote his first solo collection of poems known as Poems Chiefly Lyrical, and it was published in 1830. And this particular collection has three important poems known as the Kraken, Ode to Memory, and Mariana. So Mariana is actually a very major poem of Tennyson. So the context of the poem Mariana has been taken from Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. And Mariana actually talks about this woman who is living in complete isolation from the world. So her identity has become all about her isolation. So this is all that I'm going to discuss about Mariana. I'm not going to get into too much of detail because I really have to talk about a lot of poems, and I've planned to make this video really concise. So read more on these poems. So I'll be giving just a little bit of details. So that's all about Mariana that I had to say. So another poem that I want to discuss is the Lotos Eaters. So Lotos Eaters is a very important Tennyson poem. It is about this group of mariners who kind of consume this particular substance known as lotos, and they go into a state of trance. Their mind kind of shuts down after consuming this substance, and they experience sublimity and away from the concerns of the normal everyday world. So this poem has been inspired by Tennyson's own journeys and travels. So this particular poem has been inspired by Tennyson's journey to Spain with his long-time friend who also died really young, Arthur Henry Hallam. So and yet another important inspiration to this poem is Greek mythology, Homer's Odyssey. So Odysseus, while his way back from the Trojan War to Ithaca, kind of encounters this group of mariners and their eccentric way of living life and their lotos consumption. And he kind of wonders that wouldn't it be nice to stay back here and away from the concerns of the normal society and the family life, and to just consume this particular substance and live in a state of trance. So Lotos Eaters is about that. So another poem that I want to discuss in this video is The Lady of Shalott. The Lady of Shalott is basically a medieval romance. It's kind of an Arthurian legend romance. So it is about this lady who is trapped in a tower of Shalott, and there's a curse upon her that she cannot venture out, she cannot look outside in the real world. And that is why she's trapped in that tower, and she's constantly weaving, and there's a mirror in her room to which she constantly looks, because the mirror is her outlook to the outer world, because she's not allowed to look to the outer world by her own self. So mirror becomes her outlook. So whatever she knows about the outer world is through her mirror, and she's constantly creating art. She's constantly weaving. So one day what happens is that she kind of hears Lord Lancelot passing by on his horse, galloping on his horse, and he's singing. So she's so mesmerized by his song that she couldn't stop herself, and she just goes to the window to look at him. And just as she does that, the curse is upon her. Her weaving kind of flies by, and her mirror, that was the outlook for her to the outer world, kind of breaks from end to end. So yeah, that happens and the curse is upon her and now she would have to die. So Lady of Shalott is a very important and a very major poem, and it is often prescribed in university syllabus. So, and it is also very important for all sorts of exams. So look into it a little bit more detail and read more upon it, because it is worth your while. So another poem that I would like to now talk about would be Break, Break, Break. So Break, Break, Break is one of those poems which Tennyson wrote in order to explore his sense of loss that he felt after the death of his friend Arthur Henry Hallam, who was his very long time college friend, and he died at the age of 22. So that kind of gave a lot of distress and sadness to Tennyson, because he was really close to Arthur Henry Hallam, and he's written a lot of poems to kind of explore his sense of loss that he felt at the death of his friend. So Break, Break, Break is one such poem. And in this poem, there's this very particular picture that comes across very vividly through this poem. Is this image of this solitary man standing on the rocks by the sea, all and brooding. So this particular image of this poem is very important. A solitary man standing by the river in a melancholic mood. So yeah, that is what Break, Break, Break is all about. So next poem that I'll be briefly talking about is Ulysses, and it was published in 1833. So Ulysses is a very famous Tennyson's dramatic monologue. So in this poem, it is also based in Greek mythology, and it talks about Ulysses feeling very restless as he is back in Ithaca now after roaming all over the world. So he's feeling very restless and he wants to be out there at the sea again, exploring the world. He doesn't want to settle down. He wants to be back to the back out there. So he is planning yet again to go back and take to the seas again, and he wants to give his throne to his son Telemachus, and he's trying to leave again. So the poem kind of captures his restless and travel lust and wanderlust spirit, and it is a dramatic monologue. Yet another very major poem of Tennyson. Yeah. So the next poem that I would be talking about would be The Princess, a medley, which was published in 1847. So The Princess is about this very heroic princess who kind of establishes a university, all women university, and men are not allowed inside this university. So it's a very unique and interesting poem. Read more on it. Then again, In Memoriam AHH, published in 1850, is again a series of poems about Arthur Henry Hallam's death, and how Tennyson processes his grief over the death of his really close college friend. So yeah, AHH, In Memoriam, is all about that. So the next poem that I'll be discussing about would be In Our Garden. So In Our Garden is about this particular fisherman who turns into a merchant sailor because he wants to get a job in order to save his family from becoming poor. So he has to take this job as merchant sailor. He takes it up and leaves his family behind, leaves his wife and his children behind. And he goes to the seas, and what happens is that his ship becomes shipwrecked in this particular desert island, and nothing is known about him for the next 10 years. For the 10 years, there's literally no news about him, and that is why his wife and his children consider him to be dead. So in the meantime, what happens is that because his wife thought him to be dead, she remarries to this particular man who used to be the rival for this woman's affection back in the day, and she marries him. So what happens is that after 10 years, In Our Garden has not actually died. He comes back to his wife and children, and he's very shocked and he's really heartbroken when he sees that his wife has married this man who used to be his rival for his wife's affections back in the day, and he's really heartbroken. But he doesn't come out and tell her wife and children that he's alive, because he loves his wife way too much to spoil a perfect happiness with this man. So he lets it be, and he just kind of goes away. He doesn't want to intervene. He doesn't want to spoil her happiness, and he dies of a heartbreak. So it's kind of a sad poem, and yeah, it's a really nice Tennyson poem. Another poem that I would like to discuss is Tithonus, and Tithonus is also a dramatic monologue. and it is also based in Greek mythology. So it's about this particular character Tithonus, who grants whose lover is this particular Greek goddess known as Eos. So he asks Eos at the height of his passion and pride to grant him immortality. So what he does is that he does ask for immortality, but he forgets to ask for eternal youth. So what happens later on is that he does get his wish of immortality, but his body continues to get old with time, and he grows more and more miserable. He doesn't know what to do anymore because he can't control his body. He forgot to ask about that part of the wish. He did ask for immortality, but he did not ask for eternal youth. So he's really suffering, and he wants to be released from this suffering. So yeah, the poem is a dramatic monologue, and it is about Tithonus. It is based on Greek mythology. So there's a little bit of alteration in what Tennyson talks about in this poem. He tells that that Tithonus actually himself asks for this wish, but in actuality, Eos, the Greek goddess of dawn, she asks Zeus to grant him that wish. So there's a bit of an alteration there. So yeah, I've talked about Tithonus as well. So what else would I like to talk about? So there are several important poems like the Charge of the Light Brigade, which is based on the Crimean War. And there's this particular line of this poem which is often repeated. It's like someone had blundered. That is an important part. That is an important fact about the Charge of the Light Brigade. So read about these poems in a little bit more detail because they are really important, historically really important. So there's several other poems that Tennyson has written which I have not discussed in this video. So yeah, do read upon it more, like Locksley Hall, Tear, Idle Tears, and yeah, Idylls of the King. So do read more. So that would be all for today, I guess. I've tried to make a smaller video this time because my previous video kind of was really long, so I don't want to do it this time. So yeah, I hope yet again I hope that you get something out of this video. And even if I have not discussed every poem in too much of detail, I just wanted to give you a gist of the poems of Tennyson. So yeah, that would be all for today. And read more on Tennyson, focus on particular poems a little more, the important ones which I have said. And let me know how you find this video. And forgive me if I've made some mistake. I'm still getting used to this YouTube videos. So yeah, I'll see you very soon with yet another Victorian series video. So yeah, good luck. Bye.